Good morning. Here we are once again. It's been a long time coming, but I thought I would start with one of the grade 11 poems that was selected by our school for this year. So I'm going to go through Tomorrow's Daughters. Unfortunately, somebody did point out that the previous video that I uploaded actually had no sound whatsoever. So I've tested a few things out and I'm going to give it a go again and then just double check it before I send it. Okie dokie, so as per usual, going to do a read through of the poem with a full analysis and explanation, and there will be a separate video on answering the questions specifically because it comes with an essay topic, and those usually take a little bit more detail and a little bit more work to go through, so obviously are a little bit longer. One of the things that I don't usually do, but I'm going to start doing from this video onwards, is the little phrase, like, comment, share and subscribe, please. And it was also pointed out to me that perhaps it would be beneficial to have a series of shorts that I could put up on YouTube. Several of them have been recommended to me from other channels that I subscribe to. Some people commented about it, other people who have watched it have pointed it out. So also in the comments below, please include if there are maybe a few things about grammar or pronunciation or punctuation or idioms, sayings, figures of speech, anything like that you just want to watch a quick little thing about, just to help you remember things or to make the difference between there and there. But yeah, so yeah, planning on doing a few of those. So like I said, in the comments below, just let me know if there are any of those that you would like me to cover. Okie dokie. Tomorrow's Daughters, 2005, by Lebogang, Mashile. I want to write a poem about pretty black girls who don't relax and lie their dreams away. Voices that curl the straight edges of history, hair-thin slices of a movement turning the world kinky. I respect the disciplined, silent screamers who expose the holes. Emily Dickinson, I am climbing through to your wooden shed of isolation, where the robin's song robbed you of your sanity. I revere people to my own detriment, perhaps you did too, but when I enter your hallowed hearth, please don't turn me away. I want to show pretty girls how to look at their hearts with eyes blaring at full blast, the way you did. Together we can build a bridge to the promise in their faces and pull them towards poems by pretty black girls wearing crowns of change. Okay, so quite a bit of color going on. Different figures of speech, there's symbols, reference to one of the earlier female poets who has obviously had an impact on Lebogang, the lady who wrote this poem. So going to go through all of that bit by bit. Okay, one of the first things you'll notice is the lack of punctuation and the enjambment and the free verse. So there are no full stops, commas, or anything like that. What makes the differences or the changes excuse me, is the sibilants that we've got with the silent screamers, because obviously that slows your reading down. The alliteration found elsewhere, just the sectioning of the poem, looking at different ideas, focusing on a particular poet, wanting to do something, an action, etc. So I'll explain how all of that goes. Okay, I want to write a poem about pretty black girls. So we've got the pretty black girls. It's repeated again further down, pretty girls, and then in line 25, pretty black girls again. So, sorry. So the target audience for this particular poem is for pretty black girls. It is repeated. It is for emphasis, but as any teacher would ask, what are you emphasizing? The importance, okay? But why is it important? Why is that repeated? Why do we need to pay attention to that? A, that's who she's addressing. And B, if you look at the content of the poem, she doesn't want pretty black girls to try and be something that they're not. She wants them to embrace who they are, to be proud of their heritage, and to actually use that to not get over themselves, but to kind of stop being passive and say, you know, I do have a voice, I do have a place, I do have dignity, and I'm going to make a change. Okay, so to be proactive, and that's the main idea of this poem. So the pretty black girls is repeated to emphasize that these are the people that I'm addressing. Yes, you are pretty, and yes, you can do something with your life. Okay. Again, the free verse comes into this as well as the enjambment. She's getting carried away. She is determined. She is trying to inspire people. This obviously means a lot to her. And you can definitely pick that up with the enjambment and the free verse. There's no restrictions, there's no boundaries, there's no stereotypes, no categories that people have been placed into. Yes, she's very overwhelmed by this feeling, and she's trying to be assertive, and she wants people to understand this. Okay, so don't relax and lie their dreams away. So there's two things happening here. Relax can be in terms of hair, like hair relaxant, and she's telling them don't do that. We've also got that mentioned again with the curl, the straight, and the hair, and the kinky. But secondly, don't relax and lie your dreams away. So literally, we've got hair relaxer, figuratively, don't be passive. Don't just sit back. Don't allow people to tell you who you are and what to do, and this is your purpose. You are a person, you can think, do something. Okay? Then we've got here voices that curl. What are they curling? The straight edges of history. So, curl. History is often described as straight in terms of very linear. This happened, that happened, another thing happened, ripple effect, cause and effect, etc. And often it is written by the people who are victorious, it's written by the people who are in power, written by the people who are literate and have the resources to document things. So often it can be seen as very one-sided. You know, there might have been other people involved, different nations, different things going on at the time, but if nobody wrote it down or it wasn't kept, then nobody knows about that. But that doesn't mean they weren't there and they didn't have a part to play. So she's urging them to curl the straight edges of history. Don't just sit back and allow this to happen, okay? Straight edges of history is also a metaphor, comparing history to something like a ruler, maybe the edge of a desk, something like that, that's very straight, very geometrical. And the hair thin slices of a movement turning the world kinky. So it's the little things that count, you know, it's one drop in the ocean, it's the one little stone on the avalanche, you know, that starts everything off. So it's a hair thin slice of a movement, again, turning back to the relaxing and the curling, but it turns the world kinky. Kinky is to have bends, curves, things like that. Think of a meandering river. For those of you who do geography, it's not just one straight line. There are bends and curves. Okay. So yeah, turning the world kinky. So actually getting people to see, listen, like there are other people a part of this world. There are other people doing things, you need to stop and take note. Then she stops a little bit and says that she respects the disciplined, silent screamers who expose the holes. So, expose, bring to light. Holes, they've just been talking about history, categories, stereotype, one-sided view. So somebody who brings to light other aspects that have maybe been forgotten or pushed aside or tried to be suppressed. And she calls the people who expose these holes disciplined, silent screamers. So silent screamers is sibilance. It's a very specific type of alliteration. It slows your reading down because you've actually got to form this word with your mouth, as you do with all consonants and vowels, but with the S in particular, you can't do it half-hearted. And she calls them disciplined. So disciplined has the idea of determined, methodical, sitting down, doing a thing, um, self-control, self-motivation, not passive, definitely a proactive person. And secondly, silent screamers. And because she's talking about women, and because she refers to a particular female poet, um, women didn't really have a voice in times gone by. You might say, yes, nothing's changed. But in terms of history, the people who couldn't vote, a woman's word wasn't considered viable in a court of law, things like that. So where it was actually like a really, really big issue. Nowadays, women can vote, you can give testimony in a court of law, etc. Obviously, there's still a ways to go because of social conditioning and, people not recognizing, each and every single individual as like a dignified person. But yeah, so I'm referring to the times where, like, by law, women couldn't do things, okay? And a silent screamer. So they wrote poetry, they wrote novels, they wrote letters to their friends. So yes, they didn't have a voice audible out in the public, but on paper and amongst themselves, in a sense, they were screaming. They had a lot to say, a lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts, okay? And they exposed these holes. So going back and reading those ladies' works, a lot was said about society, a lot was pointed out, a lot was taken to task, and that's what they're referring to. So now she refers to one particular person, Emily Dickinson, and she says, I'm climbing through to your wooden shed of isolation. So Emily Dickinson is one of these silent screamers in history, and she had a lot to say about society and many other things. And she actually became a recluse. She isolated herself, she separated herself from society. She had a specific place where she actually worked and wrote her poems and her thoughts and her ideas, etc. And it was literally a wooden shed of isolation. She, didn't have much to do with family, lots of written correspondence with friends, but not a lot of people were actually allowed, into the property, into her space. And so we have the wooden shed of isolation. Again, it's a metaphor comparing a wooden shed to isolation. Okay, so it's a direct comparison. It's kind of like, what is the wooden shed made out of? Isolation. Where the robin song robbed you of your sanity. So very often in Dickinson's poetry, you will come across birds, specifically robins, and they are a symbol. They represent spring. And spring in itself represents freshness, new birth, new beginnings. If you think of spring, that's generally when a lot of animals have their babies, things like that. After the winter season, things are growing again, pollination, stuff like that. So the robin song robbed her of her sanity. So she wasn't particularly sane towards the end, and that robin song robbed you of your sanity. So it's almost like this focus on her poetry, being isolated, being a recluse. It did, in a sense, drive her mad. But that doesn't detract from what she wrote. And then the poet has a little moment aside where she does some personal reflection. I revere people to my own detriment. Perhaps you did too. So revere is to hold in great esteem, is to honor, admiration, respect. And if you have the idea of putting someone on a pedestal, you're not physically putting them on something for everybody else to see, but you make much of them. You always speak about them. You follow what they do. You are influenced by them. You think they are a great and wonderful person. And usually what happens is they do something wrong, and it's a terrible disappointment. The higher they are, the harder they fall. So it's definitely that kind of idea that you've made so much of this person, it's almost like they can do no wrong, and then when they do, it leaves you devastated. Okay, and that's where the detriment part comes in, because if you do something to your own detriment, you are doing it to your own harm, your own injury, whether it be physical or mental or emotional. So the poet is saying that I make much of people and it's to my own detriment. So maybe this has happened, that she's made much of somebody, she's honored and respected and admired this person, and then you find out that they're only human and you get disappointed. And she thinks that perhaps maybe Emily Dickinson did this as well. And it could be a reference to poetry, writings, thinking that people would know better, but they're actually not. Okay. And then she says, so she speaks again to Emily and Dickinson and says, but when I enter your hallowed hearth, please don't turn me away. So she's coming to her as a mentor to learn something. And we've got hallowed hearth here. So if any of you read or have watched Harry Potter, the Deathly Hallows, so it's things that are held in high esteem. It's things that are almost sacred, honored, okay? They are revered. It does generally have a sense of religion or worship, like if something is consecrated, if something is set aside, if something is separated because it is special, it's hallowed, it's revered. Okay, hearth is the floor place of a fireplace. That is where your fire is made, and especially in times gone by and even a little bit today, it's also where most of the meals were cooked. It's where the family gathered. It was quite literally a place of warmth, but also emotional and mental warmth, the coming together of family, sharing, enjoying one another's company. So it's quite a special place, it's a definite comfort zone, and she doesn't want Emily Dickinson to turn her away. Why? Because she wants to show pretty girls how to look at their hearts with eyes blaring at full blast. She wants to get or learn something from Emily Dickinson. Later on, she says, together we can do this. So she wants to show the pretty girls how to look at their hearts, looking within, looking at who they are, okay, not trying to be something else, with eyes blaring at full blast, and that is synesthesia. So it's the confusion of senses. You can't see a sound, you can't hear a color, you can't taste a feeling. Okay, yes, on one hand it is quite a rare medical condition. Um, but in terms of poetry and literature, it's almost like, you know, deafening silence. Okay, so yes, it's still got to do with hearing, but it's almost like it, the sense is so intense that it becomes tangible, like you could touch it, or it does take shape, like you could see it. Um, you know, so along that line. So eyes blaring at full blast. So people who are so determined, so proactive, so aspiring, you know, trying to do whatever or see that it's like full blast music. It's like the volume is turned all the way up, okay, not passive at all. And then she says, the way you did. So, Emily Dickinson, you were like this. You looked at your heart. Your eyes were blaring at full blast, okay? And she wants to have that same effect on people reading future poetry. Sorry, cat, no. Um, wants to jump on the table and then everything goes crazy. Uh, Together we can build a bridge. So, building a bridge to um, so it is alliteration, repetition of the b sound, but building a bridge, connecting, making contact. Yep, there we go. To the promise in their faces. So they are trying to bridge the gap between who they are and their potential. So actually giving them what they need in order to do what they need to do. So promise and potential are the same in this context. And pull them towards poems by pretty black girls wearing crowns of change. So she's hoping for a ripple effect. She's hoping for a cycle, that she has written this poem with the help of Emily Dickinson. She was inspired by Emily Dickinson's poetry. Hopefully somebody will read her poetry, write poetry of their own, and that will affect the next generation. So she's hoping for something long term. She's looking ahead. She's got a vision. And as this continues, as this progresses, and you have generations of pretty girls, pretty black girls, looking at their heart, seeing who they are, not being passive, being proactive, actually doing the work for what they are aspiring to, that they will actually affect change. Okay, and that brings it all the way back to the top where it says, curling the straight edges of history, turning the world kinky, not relaxing and lying their dreams away. Okay, that they will actually have these crowns of change. Again, it's a metaphor. What are the crowns made of? Made of change. Okay, so hopefully that explains everything. Thank you very much. Like I said, if you want to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and also for shorts, if there is anything in particular that you would like me to go over, you can also leave it in the comments below, and I can do little short videos on that, and then I'll do another longer video going over the answers to the questions. Thank you. Bye.